You're listening to The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
Okay, we're back, and I'm joined by Christopher Armitage. He's an Air Force veteran, an author, and a man whose curiosity has guided his own research into areas as diverse as human trafficking and disaster preparedness, and whether the worst impacts of the Citizens United decision might be blunted by state corporate laws. He's just an interesting guy. His Substack what do you call it on Substack? A publication is called The Existential Republic, and it's grown really amazingly. And it's grown because it's good. He's a good writer. He writes about things that matter. And like every one of you listening, he sees the direction we are going, and he is not amused. Chris, welcome.
Hey, I'm happy to have you on the show. I appreciate you having me.
No, I'm glad. And I like your site a lot. I think you write about interesting things, and you write so well. It's just a pleasure to read.
Yeah, well, it feels about as good to be read. I've spent plenty of time reading things that not many folks read as I worked on the craft of writing, because that's so much. I've always loved learning, and I've never been great at shutting up. But once I learned how to be able to package that and share it with people in a way that they responded to, things transformed pretty radically.
Yeah, I would say that site took off. That must have been a rocket ride for you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw some of the people who were following me all of a sudden and even became paid subscribers and reached out. And it's, you know what, though? I remember, there's some people who are like, where'd you come from or this or that. And I'm like, I've been plugging away for years, ran for Congress a few years ago as a lefty in a big, deep red district, and been writing books and learning and even doing some great research at different points. I did a study about deception detection abilities among law enforcement officers that was really fascinating. And now I've just ended up in this place where I get to bring some surprise, some unique perspectives together, and especially coming from law enforcement and national security, and getting to speak to, human rights from that perspective.
Yeah. It's very important. Yeah. I mean, and it's a bridge that America needs, oh my gosh. And right now, where we have law enforcement in the guise of ICE violating human rights on block after block of my city, it's enormously important.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some of the things. Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm. We have time. But I want to talk about some of the things you've written about. I mean, many of us have said that Donald Trump is coming for our elections. And now, we see that happening. The DOJ announced this week that they will monitor polling sites in California and New Jersey ahead of the November 4th election. And they listed 6 counties. The New York Times and others said, oh, yeah, they're going to be there and they're going to monitor elections. Like that's a normal thing that we've done in the past, except this really isn't that. Because what they said is they're setting up between now and then, and they will be available, this is a quote, to receive questions and complaints from the public related to possible violations of federal voting rights laws. Now, that's in the months before an election, and all of that just feels January 6th-y to me.
Yeah. Well, if there's anyone who knows, I'm originally from New Jersey, and everybody from New York and New Jersey knows about how much Donald Trump rips people off. He was in the bed with the mob, all these things. There is no doubt among anybody who's looking at this situation honestly that he will do anything and everything he can do to prevent a free and fair election and to guarantee every election going in the direction he wants it to go, cementing one-party Republican rule. I mean, it really feels like it would be foolish to expect anything less than that from this man, except now we have we have had the purge of the federal government. It happened already. It's loyalists. It's people who will bend to the knee. That's what's left. So there isn't, a Department of Justice that's going to be anything but an attack dog that he can sick on people. SCOTUS is going to support him on anything he does. We have had a full capture of our federal government. Now it's up to how many state-level leaders are going to be willing to ruffle feathers, are going to be willing to take steps that it's Calvin ball. You don't get to win Calvin ball by playing Calvin ball. They're going to change the rules to be whatever they want them to be.
Yeah, this last week, a group called the Steady State, which is made up of former national security, CIA, people who worked on Capitol Hill, folks who spend their time looking at other countries to see how they're doing on democracy, issued a report about us. And it's absolutely terrifying. And it says what you are saying, that democratic backsliding in the U.S. is accelerating, characterized by a consolidation of executive power, erosion of institutional checks and balances, and deliberately weakening of civil service protections and oversight mechanisms. They got the federal government, absolutely weaponized it entirely. And they are working on rhetorically hiding that, so somehow making that that's normal and the rest of us aren't, and which just couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. Well, and the way that the media has been captured is probably the biggest thing cementing all of this. There is a complete. I know people have talked about how Fox News, they were labeled as entertainment rather than media, and that got them around different things. No, you don't get to just, if you're in a movie theater and you shout fire, you can't just say, I'm an entertainer. And that's not a valid excuse in a court of law. And so,
they got away with
faith
it.
Actors who are absolutely, and they shouldn't have been, and we need to take them to task. And it's going to result in negative. We're not going to be able to just have everybody get along all the time and prevent any stressful situation. We're not. It's just not how you get out of these situations with autocracy. There's going to have to be confrontation, and that confrontation can be state-level attorney generals charging disinformation actors who are being paid by foreign governments to disrupt our nation, as proven in courts of law in the United States. Charge them for those crimes. Put them in a jail cell. That's what has to happen. We cannot have a captured information environment, because there is this error that people are making, where they presume that if things get bad enough, people will wake up. There is nothing inherently about suffering that brings us closer to the truth. Under Stalin, there were people resorting to cannibalism. Family members would starve to death, and the rest of the family would eat them. That's horrific, right? So you would think that's about as bad as it can get. So everybody must have known how bad Stalin was. Well, no. There was research showing sizable portions, sizable minorities, around a third of people in the USSR at least, blames the United States because that's who Stalin told them to blame.
Yeah. Well,
that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. I'm a little less frightened about the media than you on this, in part because, first of all, I agree with you that right-wing consolidation and their complicity with Russian and other propaganda campaigns to divide us are enormously disruptive and painful. But 30% means something different still in America. And I think reality is setting in. I mean, Trump's poll numbers are tanking. The numbers of people willing to come out and protest are higher. Economic troubles, troops on our street, the demolition of the White House. Even the most skilled propagandists can't hide this in the media ecosystem in America, because it's unlike Stalin's. It's not. There's a lot of right-wing propaganda for sure, but if people want to find truth, if they want to find your writing, they can. If they want to find other points of view, they still can. They haven't managed to snuff that out, and I take some comfort in that, and in comfort in the continuing collapse of his public support.
Yeah, well, It's tough to call it a collapse because, I was just actually, it's unfortunate, Newsweek is one of the worst offenders about this because they'll see the same poll and they'll post in the morning, Trump is being destroyed, and then in polling, and then in the afternoon, the same poll, they'll say, Trump is doing great. The most recent polling I've seen from reputable sources has Trump's approval rating at an 88% among Republicans. Now, he is faltering among independents more. But even beyond that, let's say people wake up out of information environments, which I'll also say, though, as a former law enforcement officer, I still got a lot of friends in that community. And I encourage people to go out there. Why don't you contact the Trump supporters and ask them? And when I do that, what I hear is, yeah, Doge did a great job, and we got to get rid of these immigrants. And I do not hear that anecdotally, and I don't think that that's what polling is showing. As far as there's more angry people who didn't like him already are getting angrier and are getting more active. But also, so much of modern American conservatism is an identity. It's an ecosystem. They're listening to the same media outlets. They're consuming that information, and it shapes their reality. On a deep level, we don't believe. Most humans don't believe what we see. We see what we believe, and that is still very widespread. But I don't want to play doomsayer about that. I want to let's say you're right, and people are coalescing against him and seeing that things are bad and they're ready to act, which, of course, No King's a great example. We still have at least a dozen states in the United States that are operating as autocratic single-party regimes, because when you make sure that large swaths of your population, cities with millions of people, have 8 ballot drop boxes rather than hundreds, and you do everything, you literally throw ballots that are uncounted out, like we know happened without consequence in Texas. When those things are happening, that's already Russia stuff. That's there. So we have all these
Jim Crow stuff, for sure. It's Jim Crow stuff in a modern way, and they're using it. I mean, we have experience in America and messing up democracy on purpose, and I agree with you that we have. In my head, they're two separate conversations. How do we improve the democracy, for sure, but how do we keep it from disappearing entirely? Is a not quite the same question. You recently sort of wrote about where America fits on the continuum from democracy to dictatorship, and you looked at a lot of the scholarly and evidence about that. But I guess let's take a minute and talk about what you found and where we are.
Sure. We're in the early stages of autocratic control where it hasn't fully coalesced. It can still be pushed back against. And this is scholars who do amazing work. I'm so grateful for the political science houses out there, and Erica Chenoweth and work like that that's being done to look into this. We're on the early stage now. We're able to look at other countries that were in similar positions. We have this great distributed system in the United States. We have so much power among the states. This gives us some unique tools to fight back, but it's estimated somewhere between 2 to 10 years is how long it'll take for it all to fully coalesce. It looks like we're headed more towards a hungry, illiberal democracy where elections happen and sometimes the people you like win, but there's so much of an institutional tilt that it's insurmountable. I mean, the Texas Attorney General admitted himself that the Democrats would have already flipped that state. Now they're working in an environment where they're more free from consequence to rig elections in red states.
Yeah, courtesy of John Roberts. Yep.
Absolutely. So, that's where we are in the continuum right now.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, you also said that what's required to fix it is sustained civil society mobilization. I think I agree with that too. Absolutely agree with that too. I do think we aren't strangers to that in our country. I actually think that's the only way we've ever really made progress with that kind of effort. It's what got us the 5-day work week because labor organized around the country. It's what brought an end to Jim Crow. It's what enfranchised women. And those were left-leaning victories. And then the left thought, well, we've won, and they got lazy. And the right then engaged in sustained mobilization, which is what got they've done it since the ERA fight in the 70s. They mobilized in churches, and that, I think, brought an end to the right to abortion in America. So I don't think it's uncommon. I just think that pro-democracy, liberalization forces got lazy and outsourced their work to lawyers. But I think no kings, and maybe I don't want to get your view on this, that we are beginning to learn how to mobilize again at these giant levels that are going to be needed to push back.
So I completely agree with you. I mean, but one of the big things I'm trying to explain to people is, it's not just about getting 3.5% out in the streets for, if you don't do anything with a march, it's essentially a parade. It needs to be building towards the levers that influence people's behavior. We don't have time to elect new swaths of politicians on every level. There is not time for that. But I don't think that's the most effective strategy anyway. Humans generally conform to the shape of their vessel. I mean, I'll tell you something about myself. I was a different person a lot of times when I was working in law enforcement. When I was a substitute teacher, I was a little bit of a different person. When I was a wrestling coach, we humans conform to the shape of our vessels. That's just a thing about us. Very few people have a wildly or an incredibly stable set of behaviors across all things. That is a rare, exceptional human. And so,
and we call those people rigid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you should adapt to your environment.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's healthy.
Yes.
And so politicians, being humans, are influenceable by behavior, by a lot of what I'm advocating for right now is figuring out how to get politicians to do the things that we want them to do. How do you get them to listen to you? How do you get them to support the policies that you actually want to support? My favorite tactic, and please, I want everybody possible to steal this, talk about it, share it, is most states and at the federal level, you can look up everyone who's ever donated money to that politician. You can look up how much they donated. You can look up their phone number, their email address, their name, their employment. You can contact them. It is legal. It is your First Amendment right. Don't let anybody tell you it isn't. Now, you're not allowed to tell them to vote for someone else, and you're not allowed to raise money from them. You are allowed to call them and say, hey, you're a Republican representative or you're a Democrat representative. They did X, Y, or Z. How do you feel about that? You gave them $6,000. Is that what you want your money going towards? You can ask those questions. Now, you do that for everybody who's done a max donation, for your everyone from your city council member to your, sheriff, to your U.S. House representative, to your senator. You do that enough times. Well, let me tell you, they answer those phone calls. When somebody who's donated, $250,000 to Lindsey Graham over the last 20 years, when that person calls him, he answers. You do that with enough people. You send them letters to their house. You get other people to do it too, and you stay persistent. Well, now this person who won't answer your phone calls, they're going to know your name. I promise you they will. And they're going to take what you're saying seriously, because even if all their donors hate your guts and agree with Ted, well, they sure as heck don't like getting these phone calls. They don't like getting public attention on them. They don't like being seen. And that's what we can do, is we can shine the spotlight on the people who are funding authoritarianism. And that's a fun one, the businesses and the people that are funding it.
You've talked a lot about that. And we can't get at the dark money that has been unleashed by Citizens United because we don't know that. But still, there's a lot of money that is visible that people can go after. And I want to be really clear. You are not telling anybody to go dox somebody the way the right wing is doxing reporters and others on the left.
No.
You're not saying, right, and under no circumstances are we saying, tell somebody where their children live. That's not what we do. But you can write to anybody and say, seriously, I have a better use for that $250,000. Instead of spending it to destroy a neighborhood in Chicago, instead of spending it to wreck the environment, instead of spending it just because it gets you a seat in the new ballroom, how about doing something for, and you name it. These are perfectly legitimate and decent things to do.
Absolutely. Always to start out, honey gets you farther than vinegar. And I think it's really important that, we try to have good faith conversations with people and bring the facts, yep. And really show them like, hey, this is like irrefutable here. This is when this vote happened. And I just want, like, you don't want working class people to make more money here? Your representative voted against raising the minimum wage. So is that how you feel? And get them on a few different. Well, so you're donating to someone
yep.
who said publicly that it's okay for our Fourth Amendment rights to be destroyed. Now, I know you support the Second Amendment, but do you not care for the Fourth? Because you have U.S. citizens who are getting, it's warrantless that they're being abducted and taken away somewhere.
Yes.
I hope you don't get too much of a tan this weekend, 4th of July weekend, because the Roberts Supreme Court said that now your Fourth Amendment's gone if you have a bit of a tan, because racial profiling is legal now. How do you feel about that? You don't care for you only like the one constitutional amendment. It pushed people on it, but of course we can't be out here threatening people's safety and that kind of stuff.
Let's just be so people who are listening. You might be wondering, you know what? None of these billionaires are going to take my call, but there's an address written that on every one of these disclosures you can send a letter to. Absolutely every one of them.
And even start at the top of the list. Or work your way down. You want to go grab your indivisible group, get something to do. Every Saturday, meet up. You do, 5 letters each to top 100 donors for X, Y, or Z representative with a specific demand. And then you all call those donors as well. And maybe send them an email as well. If they don't, do following up each week, kind of using cold calling principles or cold contact sales principles. Like, okay, this week we're doing the letters. Next week we'll do the phone calls. We'll track who followed up with what. And you might be able to turn some of those donors. That politician you might be able to tell that politician, hey, all these people who donated to you last time, they're going to be looking for somebody else to donate to next election because we see you. The public has never been more dissatisfied with their representatives than in the modern era. And yet representatives get reelected at a higher and higher rate. And what a fascinating situation that as we've slipped into tyranny, that has been the trend, right? So clearly, if we can restore the congruity between public belief about public policy, what we want to see happen, if we can get back there, then it would follow that things will get better. I saw this study from Princeton that said that in the 1960s, when the public's views on different policies pretty much matched how Congress voted. And those two lines have just gone further and further away from each other in the 50, 60 years since then.
Well, right. And, Congress has been very true to one thing. They deliver for who they work for. And back in the 60s, they worked for the people who elected them. But they worked for the people who that still left a lot of people out because we had Jim Crow in the 60s. But they worked for the people who elected them. Now, courtesy again of the Supreme Court, they work for the people who draw the maps and who give the money. And and the outcomes are different. Congress is delivering for the people who draw the maps and give them money. But that's not delivering for the American people.
Right now, we have illegitimate federal government. And I think you could argue we've had an illegitimate federal government since the year 2000, when the Supreme Court decided a presidential election.
And let's just, Chris, this bears saying. In Bush v. Gore, they decided the presidential election by saying you cannot count the votes in the rest of Florida. Time's run out. We just cannot recount these votes. We're only going to recount the ones in this county. So they decided the election by saying we're not counting American votes, and that was a terrible decision.
And they all should have been fired. If you're going to stop Americans from casting their legal votes, you should be in a jail cell. And that's
counting
when
the
I
ones
talk
that were
about
casted. They cast them. They just refused to count them. Yeah.
Even worse, even more egregious. And if we can start living our principles, living our values, things will get better. The fact is that the zealots have been fighting hard, and they've been doing it for a long time. The anti-choice people who've wanted to outlaw abortion for all causes, they never stopped fighting. Even after the Supreme Court made its ruling, they fought and fought and fought and fought, and they did not care about anything above their morals and values. We cannot value the rule of law more than we value the rule of justice. That is crucial because law has been weaponized against us now.
Yeah, well, I don't think we have that definition of rule of law. I think they're acting lawlessly. But yeah, I agree with you. We need to keep justice. Law without justice is a terrible thing. So Chris, I hear from people, and I'm sure you do too, who say that we are overwrought. That look, the pendulum swings, and they've overreacted. Now it's going to swing back. And I listen to these people who have risen above the fray that you and I are in, and they talk about this like it's just a normal pendulum swing and we shouldn't worry so much, even though what the Trump administration is doing is terrible. The arc of history is always going to the good side. How do you answer folks who, aren't fully in the fray yet, even though they know they don't like Donald Trump, but they assume it's just a pendulum swing?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting reality some folks get to live in. It would be great if we could just feel that, if that could just be the case. But, we could defer to the experts, the people who study this for a living and say, hey, we have large swaths of the country with massive levels of voter disenfranchisement where there aren't consequences for people being or for not counting ballots that have been cast because of where they were cast, or reducing the number of polling locations, or dropping ballot drop boxes from almost 100 down to less than 10 in cities with millions of people, like happened in Dallas. That's not democracy. And that's the progress that we're making. That's the process that's happening, is the factual destruction of democracy, the structures and the levers that create it. This isn't policy differences. When we see the Supreme Court of the United States saying the president can do whatever they want as long as it's an official act, and you are not legally allowed to investigate whether an act is illegal or not, that is putting the president above the law, without a doubt.
Absolutely did that.
Yes. And so we now have a presidency. The unitary executive theory is what the Supreme Court, more than half the members, have explicitly endorsed. It turns the president into a king. That's not hyperbole. It's factual. It says the president of the United States is above the law. If the president does it, it is legal. These people are still upset about Nixon, and they never stopped being upset about Nixon. So we don't have free and fair elections. We have one party out of the two that is completely acting in a lawless manner without recourse. They are now weaponizing our justice system to attack political enemies. They're demonizing large swaths of people. The Constitution doesn't come back from being destroyed. The Fourth Amendment's cooked. Even the Second Amendment is. Because they'll weaponize it against you. They'll come after you. They're doing everything they can. It's not just guns for anyone who wants them. Every single part of our Constitution has been under attack, including the 22nd Amendment, because Donald Trump is in the White House showing off his Trump 2028 merch. You don't recover from that. There isn't a pendulum swing back from the complete destruction of all the norms that were holding up our political and electoral system. We're fighting against people who have made it clear that they want single-party rule. They do not want freedom. They do not want justice. This is not politics as usual, and the United States will never, ever be the same again.
Well, Chris, you're not saying we can't beat them back, though, are you? You're saying it takes an effort, a huge effort for sure. But are you saying
the Democrats would need a 20%? There's fights we can win, but at the federal level, mathematically speaking, the Democrats would need about a 20% win at the national level. It would need to be a wave of an unprecedented level. But here's the problem. Let's say Louisiana, Texas, Florida, they have this huge wave. Well, what do you do when there's only 8 ballot drop boxes in Dallas during that wave? Maybe all the rural counties start waking up. Well, Trump still has his 88% approval rating above Republicans. That's in the last 30 days. You know, I haven't seen a compelling case to be made that the federal government of the United States can be saved. I think the state governments have an awesome opportunity. This is an incredible time for state governments to create parallel institutions and to provide things to their residents that have been ignored by the federal government for a long time.
Yeah.
But the federal government, I just can't see a compelling, or I haven't heard a compelling case for how we can pull out of this when the Supreme Court's made it clear. It's the difference between an official action and an unofficial action by the President of the United States is whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. We can really clearly see in how they ruled against Biden and Obama versus Trump. The Department of Justice, the purge.
What they've said is that distinction is up to them to make. They've taken the power to themselves and said, we get to decide this. And we're not even going to give clear guidance. When it comes up, you just call us and we'll tell you, which is, I think, maddening and power grab by that court, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is it over? Oh, go ahead.
I guess what I'm going to ask you is given the tenor of this conversation, it might be obvious, but I want to ask it anyway, because here in Chicago, we are facing escalating federal violence and provocation. Honestly, untrained, ill-prepared ICE troops thinking they're trying to do what they've been asked to do and terrified of a city that shouts at them every time they show up to tells them to go away. And I am proud of everybody standing up and shouting at them and chasing them away. But as they run away, they throw tear gas canisters at people. I mean, they're in no jeopardy from the public. There's not a insurrection here. But we're not letting our neighbors and friends be picked off the street without a fight. And yet, escalating violence, escalating incitement by these people. Commerce is way down. It's cost us a fortune. People are afraid to leave their homes. I'm looking at all of this aggression, and I am thinking it's all about, because it isn't serving the purpose of capturing anybody. I just think they want to try and incite us to behave in a way that would give them some justification to go to court and ask for further military presence. And if they don't get it, I guess there's an insurrection act. Do you think they would go there?
Well, I think at this point, I don't know what anyone thinks would stop Donald Trump from doing whatever he wants to do. I'd ask you that. Do you think there's anything that really?
Here's what I think.
He said his full attention is on the ballroom.
Yeah, I know. He will do what he wants to do. I do not believe, and I keep asking people. I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'll tell you what I think first. I do not believe that we will have a Tiananmen Square incident in the United States. I do not believe, no matter what the government orders, U.S. troops will fire on American protesters. I just don't believe that.
I mean, it's happened before, though. Multiple times in U.S. history, U.S. troops, Ohio, Neil Young, one of my favorite songs. It's happened.
About Kent State.
Yeah.
I don't think, I'm not saying that people won't, that accidentally scared, untrained troops won't fire and kill somebody. I think that is on the offing. But the kind of organized, we are going to order the mowing down of people. Those National Guard people weren't ordered to kill people at Kent State. I think the only time U.S. troops were ordered to shoot Americans was a labor strike at Blair Mountain, and then the coal miners. So I don't think we have a big history of that, and even if ordered, I just don't think they will do it. Do you?
No.
I mean, that would be pretty frightening.
I'll tell you, I served for almost a decade in the U.S. Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
I was military police, deployed twice, and I think it depends on who you send. Honestly, as dark as that sounds, if you send the Marines, they're going to mow people down. I'm absolutely certain of that. Most of the Army, they live in a different reality. I'm telling you, I can go grab beers with a bunch of buddies down at the VFW. They love Trump. They think he's doing an amazing job. When I was a corrections officer, there was a retired police officer there. Now, this isn't military, but there was a retired police officer who was on a second career as a corrections officer. He told me, he was bragging about this huge Trump flag he had in his front yard, and he was saying he would literally go to Washington, D.C. with a gun and lay down his life for Trump. That was before the election even. Mm. The military is filled with people like that. I know them. I can sit down and have a good time hanging out with them. But they live in a different reality, and in that reality, Antifa has taken over your home. And they got to do what they got to do, and Trump is never wrong.
Well, I hope you are. I don't know. That's a very frightening. That is a very frightening vision, Chris. Wow. I mean. Because I agree with you. I won't put anything past Trump. He would not be. I mean, he's already asked if they could shoot protesters in the legs. So I agree. I put nothing past them.
Look what we did in Vietnam. Look at we do bad. The United States has done bad things all over the world. And human courage exists. It absolutely does. Mm-hmm. But like I said earlier, humans conform to the shape of our vessels.
It doesn't exist in Congress, in the Republican Congress. Yeah. I mean, where are they, Chris? Like, they're taking another week off, I hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are they? That's a good question.
I think we should offer
their jobs.
It's a reward for anybody who can find the Republican Congress. Hello? Yeah. We need you. Come on back to work, fellas.
Well, I think it's the job of a lot of us to make their lives kind of suck in a legal way, like not breaking any laws. But it should really be terrible to be betraying your country. Your life should not be good. You shouldn't be able to use social media because everybody is going to come at you and talk about what you're doing. And you go out to a restaurant, people are going to recognize you, and they're going to want to ask you. They're going to have some words about what you're doing to this nation and to our future and to the future of humanity and your betrayal of your oath and what the people need. And you should be taken to task every single day. And what is it they say? If you want a friend in D.C., get a dog. First of all, I'm not going to criticize the people fighting the fascists. I'm grateful for the Democratic Party and for the work that they're doing because they are the opposition that we have.
Yep.
But I'll just also say that nobody in elected office is our friend. All of them have a job to do, and we will demand that they do that job. That's our job. And if we do that, if enough of us step up, that's the thing. A lot of the things I've said, maybe rightfully, they've made people hey, you're saying we're cooked, we're done. We have so much power, more than you or me. We have so much power. Humans, people, the citizens, the public. Those numbers are powerful. Thousands of people acting. The No King's Days protest. Every day people message me and they say, are you talking to Governor Newsom? Are you talking to, Governor Pritzker? Are you talking to, I'm a few degrees of separation from these people, but you probably know what I know about people in the halls of power in elected office. What gets them to act? Donations being influenced, votes being influenced, and the public discourse relates to both of those. If they become politically toxic because of the decisions that they are making or are not making, that will influence their behavior heavily. And if they're not raising money, or it's very clear that they're not going to raise a cent next election, that's going to influence their behavior. So a good idea won't change even the best politician's mind as effectively as something that's going to influence votes or money.
Yeah, and while we're doing that, we have to continue to build civil society and strengthen it. because that also is a bulwark against tyranny. And they try and damage civil society in all kinds of ways. I want to shout out again to my fellow Chicagoans who are going out of their way to help each other, but Chris, you talked about elected leaders. I am seeing in this crisis, first off, the elected leaders are doing fine. I mean, particularly the Democratic elected leaders, from the governor in my state to Chicago aldermen, who don't usually get a lot of praise, are out there protecting people and doing what they can. But the opportunities for leadership are so many that ordinary citizens are stepping up and leading. They're organizing drives to bring food to people who won't leave their house because they're afraid. They're organizing drives to watch the children as they leave school to make sure they can get home safely. They're organizing to go watch ice and let people know where they are. They're doing things. People are taking leadership, not waiting for somebody elected to do it, although the electeds are doing their job. They're building a stronger and more cohesive civil society. I went out with people last night, Chris, to a neighborhood that's not near my house, but one that has been attacked by ICE. It's an immigrant neighborhood, just to go to dinner so that we could support some of the local businesses that have been so badly impacted by this. And you know what? I looked around and I was not alone. People are actively engaged in that kind of civil society work that makes us stronger, that I think then allows us for the kind of sustained political action that you talked about.
Yeah, well, and, I want to address exactly what you're saying, because I love that, and it makes me so happy. And there is courage. There are people stepping up. And what's the best way to fight tyranny from this guy, me, who's saying that we're, the situation is as dire as it is? The best way to fight tyranny is to help your fellow man. Bring food to people who need food. House people who need housing. Be kind. Have fun. Make friends. Have close-knit communities that are built beyond more than your identity as an activist or somebody who's fighting back against the government. Find people you care about. Bring them together. Some of them will have different opinions. Care for each other. We don't need to, things don't have to be, the world ending. Much of what I'm arguing for, what I kind of propose through the soft secession model, is parallel structures and independence. So that we can take care of ourselves. We can do that. Especially when you talk about Democrat-run areas, they're well managed. Even the Democrats I don't like, they can run an organization in a way that you just don't get from Republicans. And so build those networks, build the mutual aid, and build non-tax revenue. That's what I want to hear a lot more people talking about. Instead of just raising taxes on people, which we certainly should on the wealthy, but how can we develop municipal broadband? Red State, Tennessee, has municipal broadband. They're providing better service for their residents than they were being given before, and they're using it to make money, and then they get to use that money to invest in the community. We can just run things well in the Democrat areas, and then Trump can rule and the Republicans can rule over their loyal fiefdoms. And when people want to be refugees, I bet Chicago will be more than happy to accept some Louisiana refugees who are trying to escape the mess over there.
Well, all are welcome. And I'm going to tell you something just terribly sad, but Illinois tourism numbers skyrocketed in the last couple of years, and the biggest driver of that is medical tourism for people who are coming here for reproductive care that they cannot get in surrounding states.
Yeah, we go through something similar in Washington State. I'm in Spokane, Washington, so we're just about 45 minutes from the Idaho border, and we get a lot of folks coming over here, even from Montana. Now, no, I think there should be exemptions around reproductive rights, but, there's been discussion about charging
goes to your
Montana
question. Hey, I hate to do this to you and interrupt you in the middle, but our time is like 30 seconds from dawn. So would you just tell people how they can read your fabulous stuff? Where do they find the existentialist let's end with that.
Yeah, just Substack.com and Medium.com. If you just Google the Existentialist Republic, we're the only one. So you'll find it. Thank you so much for having me. This was really a fantastic conversation.
All right, Chris, appreciate it. We'll do it again sometime.
Thanks.